OMG. I cannot believe that we're already at the end of season 3, last episode, but here we are. In episode 28, I spoke about how I had created a business that was wildly successful and wildly impactful, but was created out of anger and frustration, and more so out of anger and frustration than alignment. And, I don't think I'm the only one. I think that a lot of people find themselves in careers with businesses out of convenience, right? You just go towards the thing because it's there, which, by the way, also happens in relationship. And listen, I'm a really big fan of the path of least resistance. I'm not a fan of doing the most. I don't think that we always need to be doing the most, but I am a fan of alignment. And alignment is inherently the path of least resistance. Now, alignment doesn't effort, right? It doesn't push, it doesn't try to fit. It just does, right? Alignment may still require hard work, but it's not the same thing as forcing. And, I don't think that there's anything wrong with creating out of anger and frustration. I want to make that very clear. I don't think that, my experience was bad, or that there was anything wrong with it. Or, if you find yourself in a position or in a business or doing something, because, the catalyst for that was anger and frustration. I don't want you to feel like you're doing something bad. I don't think that. In fact, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs create from this energy, right? And they create, what doesn't exist, or, what they have been a part of but doesn't really work. I think it's beautiful, in fact, when anger and frustration kind of propels you into alignment. And so my stint as a business coach wasn't necessarily that. It was temporary, right? It was something that I could do really well, but not necessarily where my purpose was. And sometimes we assume that what we're good at is automatically our purpose. And that's not always the case, especially if, you're multi-hyphenate, or just an overall talented person that, someone who's really resourceful, or, you can figure things out, you're really smart. For people like that, it can be a little bit tricky. But again, that's why discernment can be so incredibly useful here. In fact, a few years ago, I had an energy reading with someone who told me that my business coaching company was temporary. And I'll be honest, when she said this, I was like, yeah. I couldn't really wrap my head around it, because my business was thriving with a capital T. There was nothing wrong with it. I couldn't even wrap my head or imagine that this thing that was going really well, that was really helping people, that played really well to my skill set, was not gonna be a thing forever. Almost like what you mean? You must be wrong. She wasn't wrong. She was not wrong. Anywho, it was the same reader actually who helped me put language to what I now know, without a shadow of a doubt, is my purpose. It's what, I've always felt in my bones. No matter how many twists and turns my career or life took, I just always felt in my bones that this was it, that this was my purpose. And so, just for the sake of the podcast, and because, this is the last episode, I went back into my record and I actually found a copy of the reading. What you're about to hear is the first time that someone who didn't know me from a can of paint actually mirrored back to me what I had always felt but was just too afraid to say out loud. And if I'm being honest, I was too afraid to say it out loud because I was afraid of taking up too much space or sounding too cocky, right? Again, we're talking about many years ago. I have learned that lesson, but that's where I was. So tune in.
I went back to look at your purpose, just to kind of be very clear on what the purpose is this lifetime. And they were very clear that, like, so you're a healer, you're here to heal trauma. I don't know if we talked about that last time, but also like you're doing a lot of lineage work, which just means like, for instance, with these couples, like the patterns that they're doing, that they're repeating in their relationship, like those are patterns that have been going on in their lineages forever, like mom's always been like this, and grandmother was like this, and great grandmother was like this. And so there's a lot of like repeating, and you came to the planet to like do that very, it's very human work. Lineage work is interesting because I don't know how to explain it, but it's like lineage work, like basically is like you're kind of going one by one to make a better human, like to make better races, because what you're fixing are very human things. Like you're not, we're like, I work a lot with the soul, and I'm like, I'm trying to help the soul live out its truth here and all that kind of stuff. The lineage work is actually, it's very human because they're human problems. So what you're doing is like you are working. So the point is that the soul can't even like get to what it's supposed to do because this lineage work is like bogging them down. They're doing like all these things that like are just, my mom taught me this and blah, blah, blah. So you're actually like by breaking those patterns within people's families, like within like lineages, basically like you bring in a better race of people. Does that make sense?
Of course, like I'm a family therapist, right? Like I'm a couples and family therapist. That's where my training is. And this is like on my Instagram, my like niche statement is like I help millennials and couples break toxic patterns, and I talk about like being like cycle breakers. Like this is literally what I love to do.
Yeah.
It feels really good. So
yeah, I mean, I have goosebumps. It's like it's truly like your purpose. I have some ideas of how it's going to evolve and expand, so I'll share that with you too. But just to like be very clear, I like even the word lineage, which is definitely like a it's a buzzword. A lot of people understand what it means, but like that's what it is. It's that line of people, and that actually like your soul is doing a very human thing, but that is how you create better humans, basically. So you're actually like 3 generations from now, like you have more of a superhuman because of how much like pattern breaking happens, So it's really important work. It's really beautiful work.
Isn't that nuts? Like in preparing for this episode, I went back and, listened to actually the whole reading, and it is just so wild. I don't know if you're like a big fan of like getting energy readings, like, and if you record them, like if you do, or if you are just starting to do that is like in your practice, I like highly, highly, highly suggest that you keep, whatever the recording they give you and like listen back to it every so often, because it is so cool. This is kind of like journaling and looking back at your journal notes. It's so cool to just kind of see, like your progression, or, what someone might have told you many years ago and kind of what you thought about it then and what you think about it now. Like it's so cool. And, as I was listening back to this energy reading, I just thought about, the deep fear that I felt then, right? Like even though she mirrored back and gave me language for what I always felt, I was also like, wow, yeah, like I'm not going crazy, but also like what are other people gonna think? And, in hindsight, I was afraid of sounding cocky because the level of effectiveness that I had at that time, which was, some years ago, just didn't match the number of years that I was doing this like personal development lineage work. And, I kind of felt a little ashamed about that because I was afraid that people were going to think or even say to me, like, who do you think you are? And, now that I think about it, I do kind of just laugh because, yeah, of course, that's kind of what I experienced because I've been doing this work for many lifetimes. So, of course, my level of effectiveness or like how good I am at this work doesn't match how long I've been technically, quote unquote, doing this work according to like who? I don't know, like a piece of paper. I don't know, it's just like energetic work, spirit work has its own set of rules, and, like earth, human work has its own set of rules. Like, and they're not always the same. In fact, they're mostly not the same. This reading really helped me start to feel like really empowered in like what I knew to be true. That even if other people had their feelings about it, or if people couldn't even recognize it, or if I felt like I didn't really like have someone to talk to about this, like it really helped me feel like, okay, yes, I am not going crazy. All that to say that if you haven't already figured this out, if you are part of my newsletter, or if you see my work online, on social media, on my website, I am officially returning to Lineage work. And Lineage work, is exactly what it sounds like. It's cycle breaking. It's working with families. It's helping people break the patterns of suffering in their families, in their lineages, so that they can shift their lineage. And, as I've shared before, I love, 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 love working relationally. For me, like the more people there are in a session, the more I enjoy it. But I think the more effective the work can be, because we're relational beings, right? Like problems don't exist on their own, just kind of suspended in air. Like they don't come out of nowhere. They tend to exist between people, between systems, right? Like between the people that we relate to. I mean, just, think about if you've been in therapy or you work with a coach, right? Like a personal development coach, like a lot of the times you're talking to them about other people, right? Or what went down between you and someone else, right? You're talking about a relationship. And so that is just really what I love. And it was like no coincidence, even though I didn't know it then, that I went towards and specialized in couples and family work. And in particular, if you haven't already noticed, I am deeply, deeply, deeply passionate about maternal injuries work in particular. I have my own personal deep history with this work, and it also plays very well into my professional expertise and training. And so, what I'll say about that, because I know I spoke about this in the previous episode, what I'll say about that and why this is connected to lineage work in particular. I think that there are many different ways that you could do lineage work. The way that I do it and the way that I'm choosing to do it moving forward is by focusing on maternal injuries. What I want you to know is that regardless, whether your mother is in your life or not, or the circumstances that led to the current state of your relationship with your mother or absence of that relationship, I want you to know that there is a sacred, super, super sacred energetic cord to the being that carried you in their energetic home for months. And that extends into your adulthood and the development of your personhood, regardless if she was active in your mothering or not, like after you came out of her. Regardless of what happened after that, there is a connection between you and the person who carried you. And if you are, which if you're listening to this podcast, if you follow my work, you probably are. If you are committed to and serious about cycle breaking, or, breaking generational patterns of suffering, or getting rid of generational curses, which I like really, really hate that term, but whatever, language is limited. But if that's a term that you use, I'm using it so you know that we're all talking about the same thing. I want you to know that your work is incomplete, and that is a fact. Your work is incomplete without some dedicated time on maternal injuries, or just, if we want to forget about the injury part, just examining the relationship with your mother or your mother figure. Definitely, the person who carried you. Whatever that looks like for you, right? Like maybe that's just like reading a book. Maybe that's like just, bringing it up in therapy or with a coach or whomever you're working with. And it doesn't have to be like a long period of time. But what I really want you to understand is that without even looking at it and just being aware of like, and being honest about what is, your work around cycle breaking is incomplete. And so for season 4, you can expect a shift in content to mirror this shift and really deepening of my work. I am really, really excited to continue playing. You probably heard me say this before when I started the podcast. As someone who didn't really play much as a child, this podcast has really allowed me to flex and develop my play muscles and do a little bit of this and do a little bit of that and just see kind of how everything works out. And I'm really excited to continue to do that in season 4. And so we will be returning in 2024, but I really do hope that we can stay connected between now and then. And the absolute best way to do that is to sign up for my weekly-ish newsletter, which you can find on my website or in the show notes for this episode. You know, my newsletter subscribers, like, those are my peoples. Like, they're super engaged. They ask incredible questions. They are the bomb.com. Like, I love them. Those are the homies. Like, we tight. And, you know, they get access to me, to my resources, anything that I put out, details about offerings or events, hint, hint, before anybody else does. In fact, I share gems with my email subscribers that never make it to Instagram. So if email is not your thing, you can also find me on Instagram at the Josie Rosario. Though, you know, I'll be honest, just manage your expectations. I am there significantly less than I am on email. With that, I want to thank you all for hanging out with me this season. Thank you for your support in doing something new and scary, and thank you for your grace as I fumbled through some parts of it, because I surely did. And, you know, maybe you caught it, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I don't know. But, you know, there were definitely some fumble moments through this journey. Podcasting is incredible. I absolutely love it. For those of you who like process through speaking, like, really consider starting a podcast, because it's amazing. And it also was challenging in ways that I was not expecting. And so I'm really looking forward to build on those lessons that I learned through this experience these past couple of months. You know, 6 months in, we have over 5,000 downloads, which is like, what? You know, I didn't do paid advertising. My marketing was very, very, very bare bones. And so that's really incredible. And I couldn't have done that without y'all. And most of those downloads came from solo episodes. Thank you so much through your downloads telling me that, you know, you've been picking up what I've been putting down. And I'm excited to do more of that. Please re-listen to the episodes that really resonated with you. Share, subscribe, rate, all of the awesome things, so that the algorithm or whatever knows that, you know, we about something, because we are about something. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you a million times. Thank you. I wish you a restful end of the year, and I will see you in the new year.